So I'm actually extremely excited for this. It's the Grim Hollow player pack. We've got a lot of stuff that is very player focused from a variety of books, and we've got subclasses, spells, different species that you can play, and magic items as well. Tell me all about this. I'm really excited for this
Yeah, we're really excited
because
as
I
well,
like dark
actually.
and creepy stuff. So I'm I'm like yes,
Well, you'll like this player pack then, because that's what we threw in there was dark and creepy stuff.
perfect.
We really wanted a mix, honestly, of things that felt dark and creepy and thematic to the setting, mixed with things that will make your players, or you if you are a player, feel powerful. So, for example, the arc rifle, which is a magic item, one of our magic items, that's basically a rifle that shoots lightning bolt. That's going to feel powerful, right? When you have that in your hand, or the bow of four is like an elemental bow that you choose, whether it does 2d8 of fire, lightning, bludgeoning, or cold damage, depending on what element you're aligned to. And you can change that whenever you want. So rangers are really going to love that. Rogues might even love that. Those feel really powerful. But the items, the subclasses, the things that I'm really excited for are things like the Telltale Heart, which is a small heart that came out of a poppet, which was a possessed doll. And all it really does is tell you secrets when you listen to it. Or the Ring of Hidden Desire, which
Yeah.
allows you to learn the darkest desire of an NPC that you're talking to magically. Doesn't give you any sort of like combat advantage against them necessarily, but it is this dark, creepy little thing that will definitely lead into the role play of your campaign and could change things radically. You learn that a king is keeping hidden prisoners beneath his keep and he tortures them, every other night or something. And that's his darkest desire is to really punish the criminals in his city and goes a little
hmm
too far. You can use that information against him. Or you might just use it, it might just be flavor text that the party can learn about different NPCs as they're traveling through the world. So there's kind of a mix of things that are going to make you feel strong, but also things that are going to make you feel, are we the baddies? Should we be doing this?
I always love that feeling.
Yeah, that's what we strive for in Grim Hollow.
Perfect. I really want to talk about the subclasses. These are really cool and creepy, and you cannot go wrong when you're talking about something that's the barbarian path of the carrion raven. You have
Yeah.
to explain this. I need to understand more about this subclass.
So the Path of the Carrion Raven is a barbarian from Valika, which is in the north of Etharis. It's a Nordic-inspired part of our setting. And the Carrion Raven is one of our subclasses from originally Valican clans, Raiders Guide to Valican clans, which was a supplement of ours. Each subclass in that book has martial maneuvers, which are extra abilities that it's particularly useful for martial classes, but every subclass gets them in that book. And they're based on mythological sagas in world that these warriors strive to embody. So the Path of the Carrion Raven is based on this myth of a raven that led some adventurers to slay a monster under the condition that it could eat the monster's heart. And the raven was able to shapeshift into other animals as well. And so would teach different fighting styles to these adventurers. And the barbarian of the Path of the Carrion Raven tries to embody this myth by taking on forms of different animals. That's not literal necessarily. It's more kind of philosophical, but it allows you to do things when you use your martial maneuvers, which are not dissimilar to spells. You get martial maneuver points at different levels. Then you spend those points to cast these abilities. And in the case of the barbarian Carrion Raven, it allows you to do things like attack with your allies as if you're a pack. So when an ally attacks an enemy, you can use your reaction to also attack that enemy at the same time. Or you can do things like one that I really like. It's called like Primal Dominance or something like that. And it's basically a melee attack that does a butt ton of damage. You have advantage if you are already grappling the target, because the kind of theme of the attack is that you grab them and rip them apart. And if you reduce a creature to 0 hit points, you basically just rip them in half, Kratos style. So it's a violent barbarian that gives you lots of different tactical options, lots of toys to play with at the table, which is exciting.
That's amazing. Tell me about the Bard College of Requiems.
So the College of
I
Requiems
love
is
these titles, by the way.
yeah, we
These are
basically
so evocative.
we try to think like, what if bard but sad, or bard but creepy. So the Bard College of Requiems is a bard that sings kind of funerary songs. People avoid them generally. You don't want to hear a Bard College of Requiems singing at your local tavern. If you do, it's probably a wake for somebody. And it is a bard that has a little bit of a flavor of necromancy to it. It can do things like provide its bardic inspiration dice to an ally that can be added as necrotic damage to an attack that ally makes. Or if that ally is reduced to 0 hit points while they have bardic inspiration, they can instead spend the dice to not go to 0 hit points and go to 1 hit point instead. So the College of Requiems kind of controls the line between life and death.
That sounds amazing. And then we've got the cleric Inquisition domain.
Yeah,
Sure,
so
this is going to be really chill.
again, putting a kind of twist on it, the Inquisition domain cleric, and we also have the Oath of Zeal paladin in there. These two kind of go together thematically. In Grimhollow, we like to turn things up to 11 in the creepiest or sort of most grim interpretation of what they could be.
Yeah.
And in this setting, that applies to religion, a sort of fundamentalism, a unyielding doctrine that asks these paladins and clerics to seek their foes in a way that leaves no ground for nuance or subtlety. You are either with us or you are against us. Famously within the setting, there is the Arcanist Inquisition, which is a group of fundamentalist religious zealots that desire to stamp out all arcane and primal magic. They believe that magic is dangerous and the cause of all the woes for the material plane. So the Inquisition domain cleric, as the title suggests, is an inquisitor who hunts down mages predominantly. Their main skills and traits are around kind of stopping spellcasters, shutting down things like concentration. They have a higher level feature which allows them to rebuke someone who is casting spells. So they are all about finding those spellcasters and stopping them from practicing their dangerous arcane arts. The Oath of Zeal Paladin has kind of some similarities with the Oath of Vengeance, perhaps, in terms of being unyielding, hating who they deem to be their foes and hunting them down mercilessly. They are tied to their religious doctrine in a way that leaves no path for negotiation.
Gotcha. Perfect. And then we've got the Rogue of Misfortune.
Yeah.
Rogue Misfortune Bringer.
Yes, the rogue who brings misfortune with their evil eye. Basically a rogue you don't want to cross paths with, especially if you already have bad luck. The rogue enforces ill fortune on those that it does not like. It does this with an ability called Evil Eye, where it stares at a creature. Creature needs to make a save, and if they fail, you get your sneak attack against that creature as long as you don't have disadvantage on the attack roll. So it's kind of a way to, you don't have to think quite as positionally as a rogue might typically need to, as long as you just give someone a real good stare and let them know they're about to have a bad day. And you can do that as much as you like, but at higher levels, you also gain features where you can curse people. You spend a currency that this subclass has called Jinx points that allow you to apply things like critical hits will affect them on an 18, 19, or 20. You can do things like slow them down. It's kind of a trickster rogue, if you will.
On top of this, we have 2 different species now. Tell me about these. Disembodied sounds amazing.
The disembodied is so cool. I mean, I love both of these species so much, the Wexel Ken and the disembodied. The disembodied belonged to a city called Ulmer's Gate. Ulmer was the god of magic in the setting, and the city thought that they could open a permanent portal to the heavens. Unfortunately, what they did instead was spill their entire city into the ethereal plane, and everybody was thought killed in this arcane calamity. However, some years later, people started showing up again, kind of wandering out of the city, appearing in old houses they might have once lived in. And many folk mistook them for specters and ghosts initially, but they are in fact the people who lived in Ulmer's Gate that are now trapped between the ethereal plane and the material plane permanently. This gives them a sort of spectral appearance. They look more arcane than they do undead. They're not rotted or anything like that. They look perfectly normal, except that you can see through them sometimes. And they also have the ability to kind of slip into the ethereal plane and go unseen on the material plane for a while, which makes them good rogues. Speaking of Rogue of Misfortune, it makes them very stealthy. They can, lean into intrigue by quickly slipping into another room, listening to a conversation there and slipping out. Or they might be able to, get past a trap or something because they can't be affected by anything on the material realm while they're in the ethereal realm. So I love the theming behind them, but their abilities are also quite handy.
Yeah.
The Wexel Ken is probably my favorite species from Grim Hollow. I love the story of the Wexel Ken. We call them Nightmare Pinocchios in the office because they're basically a small Pinocchio-like doll that was used as a changeling to replace a humanoid child that the Fae wanted that child to raise as a champion. Maybe that character becomes an Oath of Ancients paladin somewhere else, and that's their story. The Wexel Ken was the one who was left behind, and they're glamored to look like the child that they replaced, but the glamour is imperfect and it begins to fade over time. And many parents are horrified to discover that their child is, in fact, a doll that replicated their real child. This can lead to a lot of tragedy for Wexelkins. Their story is incredibly sad, but that's part of what I like about it is that you have this kind of inbuilt tragic upbringing or this inbuilt tragic background. That being said, some Wexelkin are loved by their new families and they get taken in and they decide to love them all the same, or they band together. This species is artificial. You're resistant to poison. You're immune to disease, which makes Wexelkin handy in plague cities where they find more acceptance because they're able to treat the sick without becoming sick themselves. You also have the ability to fairy glamour yourself to look like the child that you replaced. So you can pass for humanoid if you wish in certain places. Usually they try to pass for either children, halflings, or gnomes. But you can't keep that glamour going permanently as it has gotten worse as you age. And your body never grows. You never get bigger or stronger or anything like that than what you had when you were first created by the Fae. And so you're kind of permanently trapped, almost Claudia-like, in the body of an infant. So incredibly sad, but also incredibly evocative of the setting.
And all of this is coming from several different books, correct?
We assembled them from a couple of different places. We kind of wanted a best of Grim Hollow pack. And it was really fun, honestly, working with the D&D Beyond team and being like, what if we threw this in there? And then them coming back with suggestions of, well, what about this? We initially weren't going to put the Path of the Carrion Raven or the Bladebreaker Fighter in the pack because they're in Valika. But it was honestly a D&D Beyond suggestion of like, well, let's get these martial maneuvers in there. Let's get something that's really going to excite people into that pack, something that they probably haven't seen a lot of before. And so we were like, yeah, we're game. Let's do it. Let's throw them in there.
And we didn't talk about the fighter Bladebreaker.
Yes, the Bladebreaker fighter. I love this fighter. It is also from Valika. The story with the Bladebreaker fighters is that they would rather break and change reality than conform to it. They're incredibly stubborn. They are as unyielding as iron themselves, and they will break the iron of others to overcome challenges. So they have access to martial maneuvers as well. As you might expect, two of those maneuvers, one is to damage an enemy's armor, which reduces their armor class, and the other is to damage their weapon, which I think halves the weapon damage that they put out. If you use those abilities twice on the same target, you can break the weapon or break their armor entirely. But honestly, that's just two among, I think, about, I want to say 8 or 10 martial maneuvers that the subclass has, and that goes for Path of the Carrion Raven as well. They both have a lot of options in combat. Something I really like about the Bladebreaker, though, is one of its non-martial maneuver features is battle stances. that you can go into that give you a different advantage in combat. These are things like a stance of the Viper, of the striking Viper, which gives you an extra 5 feet of reach with your attacks because you're kind of foot forward, ready to reach out and strike enemies that are a little bit further away. Or you can take a stance which gives you advantage on attack rolls, but you're leaving yourself a little bit more open, so their attack rolls have advantage against you. They're just kind of cool, flavorful things, and you can decide what do these stances look like for your fighter. It reminds me of Ghosts of Tsushima, the video game,
Yeah.
where you could adopt different stances and your character changes position and plays very differently. And I think that's a really nice little touch that they've thrown in there on top of the martial maneuvers that the subclass gets.
And then all of this, we also have 10 spells that we've acquired from like various guides as well, as you mentioned, like Ride the Lightning, Spirit Swarm. What is Spirit Swarm?
Spirit Swarm is you summon a swarm of spirits against an enemy. And I'm glad you brought up Ride the Lightning and Spirit Swarm because they both kind of highlight what I was trying to say before in terms of we wanted to throw in things that'll make you feel really powerful and cool, and they're really evocative that way. And things that are really creepy and dark and feel evocative of the setting. Spirit Swarm summons a swarm of spirits to attack an individual. It does a bucket of d8s of damage against that individual. But the theming of, like, you might say, I summon the spirits of every individual this person has slain to haunt them and drag them down into the 9 hells or whatever fits as the hells in your setting. Or I summon all the spirits of people that I have slain and in their servitude to me have them attack this person. So there's a lot of flavor that you can bring to this spell as you cast it. Ride the Lightning, on the other hand, it's just cool. You turn into a bolt of lightning, you teleport to another position on the battlefield, and anybody whose space you pass near takes lightning damage. You are the lightning bolt with Ride the Lightning.
What are some of your other favorite spells?
Creeping Touch is fun. If you don't have Find Familiar, basically you pull your hand off and it turns into a spider and then scurries away and you can see through its eyes. So it's one of those ones that, again, it's not super powerful, but it might be useful and it's also creepy. I love Flents is a higher level spell. It's 8th level. It's pretty grim, honestly. It's you use necrotic power to flay skin from your enemy. You cast it once, and it slices a piece off them. I think it does something like 68 or 8d8 damage. But as long as you maintain concentration on it, you can do it again for subsequent turns. And it's just this like slow, torturous spell that's as unpleasant to cast, I think, as it is to be the victim of. I also really like Life Tether is another one that almost got forgotten about, at least in my mind, in the campaign guide. And it's kind of like Warding Bond that you enforce upon somebody else. Have you ever wished you could cast Warding Bond on an enemy instead of an ally? So whenever you take damage, that enemy takes half the damage as well.
Interesting.
It's a
yeah.
2nd level spell, but if you cast it at 4th or 6th level, you can create multiple bonds, which means that you can be dishing out quite a lot of damage if you take damage yourself. So yeah, I could go on about all of these. Honestly, there's something I love about all of them.
And for those that do not know, like what is like the feeling and what the vibe of Grim Hollow?
Grim Hollow is a setting that strives toward, it's very inspired by dark fantasy. My touchstone personally is always The Witcher, this world of complicated morality, which is demonstrated through our subclasses. The Inquisition domain cleric has to grapple with this idea of, is all magic evil, or do I just go after evil spellcasters myself? And can I tell the difference in my religious doctrine? It kind of tries to tell stories where the players might find themselves in situations that they have to decide, is the best course of action here the most justified or the most moral course of action that we can take? So we want players to be tempted by the dark side, so to speak. And it is through temptation we want that. We don't want the players to feel like, oh, this is no fun. We're always suffering. This sucks. Like we're always getting punished for trying to do things. The setting's more about tempting you towards the dark side, and can you be a hero without becoming a monster yourself? Is kind of the question that we ask players.
It's perfect. So again, this is the Grim Hollow player pack.
Yeah,
This has 6 subclasses, 2 species, 10 spells, 12 magic items. That's a lot. And it's
yeah. I
coming from
mean,
a bunch of the books.
yeah, we wanted to pack as much in there as we could. So, and honestly, we almost ended up throwing more in there. Again, working with the D&D Beyond team, working with Jay, who's great to work with, it was just like, what if this as well? And we were like, all right, let's throw that in there too. I think originally you'll note there's 10 spells, 12 magic items. It originally was going to be 10 and 10. And then Jay came back and said, you know what, let's throw these 2 legendary weapons in there as well. I was like, all right, like, cool. I love that. Let's throw Ardor and Zeal, the fiendish and angelic weapons of the setting, that are kind of diametrically opposed to each other. Why not? Give players more to experience. And it also kind of runs that gamut as well, from character creation where you're choosing your species all the way through to the higher levels where you're getting these ninth level spells, you're getting these artifact level magic items. There's a little bit of something for everyone, no matter kind of where you are in your campaign.